Welcome to the INFOWARS Nightly News. It is Thursday, June 23rd, 2016, and I'm Leanne McAdoo. Here's what's coming up tonight.
Tonight, while the sit-ins of the 1960s were to gain rights, the sit-ins of Democrats now are to take rights away. Then, a tie in the Supreme Court blocks Obama's immigration policy. After that, should students be admitted or rejected based on their skin color? And the media fact-checks Hillary's past and comes up with some rather hilarious excuses for her actions. That's next.
Well, there were many important decisions being made at the Supreme Court today, the most important of which is Obama's immigration plan, which has been deadlocked, blocked by a 4-4 tie there at the Supreme Court. Now, this was President Obama's immigration plan that sought to shield millions who are already living in the U.S. illegally from deportation. It has effectively been killed for the rest of his presidency. Now, people who would have benefited from Obama's plan face no imminent threat of deportation because Congress has only provided money to deal with a small percentage of people who live in this country illegally. But his efforts to expand that protection to many other people is what has been blocked. Now, Obama responded saying that this takes us further from the country we aspire to be. Which, if the we he is talking about is the country he and Hillary Clinton are aspiring towards, that is just open borders and bringing in unvetted foreigners from regions that are infested with terrorism. Now, according to a Senate committee report coming out of the offices of Senator Jeff Sessions, there have been 580 terror convictions here in the U.S. since 9/11, and 380 of those terrorists have been foreign-born. So this means that they either got to the U.S. through illegal immigration or via a U.S. government-allowed legal immigration or a visa program or the refugee program. So the subcommittee had to conduct this research open source because they struggled with the Obama administration to find out where these people were actually from. And they found that of the 380 foreign-born, at least 24 were initially admitted to the U.S. as refugees. At least 33 overstayed their visas. They came from Pakistan, Lebanon, some are Palestinian, Somalian, Yemen, Iraq, Jordan, Egypt, and some from Afghanistan. Now, they talk a lot about how they have been fighting for more than 10 months to get this information from the Obama administration, and they passed it along to the DOJ to provide the information to the subcommittee on where these terrorist convictions, where they were actually from. They were trying to hide this information, of course, because this could be used against Hillary Clinton as well as President Obama while they're trying to get this passed. And so Jeff Sessions actually wrote just last week directly to the president, pressing him on this very issue. And he says, when compared with your administration's immigration policies and bearing in mind the 4 major terrorist attacks in the U.S. in the last year alone, this inability to properly screen individuals from abroad and assimilate those we admit paints a striking picture. And given that we've already identified at least 40 individuals who were initially admitted to this country as refugees and were subsequently convicted or implicated in terrorism, including an Iraqi refugee who was just admitted to the U.S. in 2012 and arrested in January of this year, it is clear that ensuring the proper screening of refugees is of the utmost importance. Indeed. But, I think that we're all just going to continue to be called crazy conspiracy theorists until people finally get a clue. Another big decision that went today in the Supreme Court, they upheld a University of Texas affirmative action admissions. So they said that the University of Texas may consider the race of student applicants in a limited way to build a diverse student body. Now, this was a 4-3 decision, and it was a surprising win for advocates of affirmative action who say the benefits of diversity at the nation's colleges and universities are worth the intrusion on the Constitution's guarantee of equal protection that generally forbids the government from making decisions based on racial classifications. So that's why this was very surprising that the Supreme Court upheld this decision for affirmative action. Decades ago, I can see where this was a very important thing. But now it is absolutely unfair. It's not in line with the constitutional promise of equal treatment. And the girl that actually brought this case forward, They're making fun of her on Twitter, calling her Becky with the bad grades. But it's not about having bad grades. You can be a spectacular student, have stellar grades, and if you're white, you might not get in due to affirmative action. And this is also interesting considering that the population of non-whites is continuing to grow. And here in Austin, Texas, where the university is, less than half of the population here is actually white. And according to the National Center for Education Statistics, Black women have recently emerged as the most educated population of people by race and gender in the United States. So this means that they are a very powerful force in not only the political realm, but also in the business world. So no, that does not mean that minorities are taking over the United States, as some people out there are going to probably say in the comments. This just means it is time to rethink the victim status and maybe rethink this whole affirmative action thing. And another great decision that came down, the high courts are going to limit drunk driving test laws. So this was the Supreme Court placed new limits on state laws that make it a crime for motorists suspected of drunken driving to refuse alcohol tests. So the justices ruled that police must obtain a search warrant before requiring drivers to take blood alcohol tests, but not breath tests, which the court considers less intrusive. And writing for the majority, Justice Alito said that breath tests do not implicate significant privacy concerns, unlike blood tests. Breathing into a breathalyzer doesn't pierce the skin or leave a biological sample in the government's possession. So that's going to be very great, because here, I know in many other states, but definitely here in Texas, there is a no refusal, and they'll just draw your blood right on the spot. So this might be able to change that. People can say it is a violation of their civil rights. Now, on Monday, 4 NYPD officials were arrested in a cops on call corruption probe. So these were 4 NYPD officials. They were arrested for accepting trips, lavish gifts, and prostitutes from 2 Brooklyn businesses in exchange for police escorts, access, and gun licenses. And that's very interesting, because gun licenses are extremely hard to get in New York. And as Jakari Jackson always points out, gun regulations are just going to create a black market for that product. And as we can see here, it's actually the police who are now getting involved and opening up these speakeasies for passing their friends along so they can have gun licenses, basically creating a police force for themselves and their friends. Now, a New York Democratic Rep Charlie Rangel was actually asked about this and about the gun permitting bribery scandal. And he actually said, you know, members of Congress deserve and need people with firearms protecting them, but not the law-abiding citizens. Take a listen.
Well, I should say the uber wealthy who have protection, had that protection, but individuals who are law-abiding citizens in your district should not. Let's talk about that.
Well, law-abiding citizens just shouldn't have to carry a gun. You know that, so you're not going to push me in that direction.
But you're protected by guns all over the place here in the Capitol.
Well, that's a little different. I think we need to be protected down here.
See, you do not deserve or need to be able to protect yourself and your family, only the very important people who we put in office. Now, Rangel was one of the people who were on the House floor yesterday. He was actually periscoping this sit-in spectacle, and they call it a spectacle. Representative Mark Walker, who was there, tweeted out that it was actually a disgrace to Woolworths to call this a sit-in, because those people back then were asking for rights while the House Democrats are protesting to have people's rights taken away. And so now, obviously, they're using their new social justice warrior tactics, saying, are they going to shut us down? Because they turned off the cameras. So then they start live streaming this, just trying to get as much attention as they can. And Washington Free Beacon's editor-in-chief pointed out that the sit-in isn't going to matter much, because the Democrats have been very quick to reframe the gun control fights as anti-terror fights. And that's been going on since the Orlando attack. And things got very heated on the floor there yesterday. Rep. Louis Gohmert was actually taking them to task on that, saying all the things that they're asking for would not have stopped the Orlando terror attack. Take a listen.
Radical Islam kills these people. Have you known a terrorist with a gun?
And as you can see, a lot of people were very passionate about this. This is radical Islamic extremism, and that is the real thing that we need to be dealing with in this country. Now, Gomer went on to say that they are using the instruments that helped gain civil rights to try to take away civil rights. He said, I'm telling you, this was incredible to see real American folk heroes like John Lewis, who was brutalized and stood up for civil rights. Folks were there using the instruments that help gain civil rights to try to take away our civil rights. Now, we pointed this out yesterday. John Lewis was actually on a secret government list there with LBJ during the civil rights. So he knows what it's like to be on a secret government list, and some government agency can just arbitrarily put you on it. But he was also on the no-fly list. He had been stopped some 30, 45 times, asked about this, and he had to deal with this for more than a year to try to get taken off that list. But that's not all. He was actually also someone who signed a letter to the Department of Homeland Security in 2014 expressing some concern over this program. They say watch lists are an important tool to guard against terrorism, but they must strike the right balance with the U.S. civil rights and liberties. And they were concerned that the program that was put in place to give people steps to redress being put on this list, they were concerned that it provides no effective means of redress or unfair or incorrect designations. So they know that this is something that people can get put on this list arbitrarily, and it's very difficult to get yourself off of this list. Paul Ryan came out and said that this Democratic stunt is not a proud moment for democracy. He said this isn't very proud for democracy or for the people who staged these stunts. He said, this is the people's house. This is Congress, the House of Representatives, the oldest democracy in the world, and they're descending it into chaos. Why do I call this a stunt? Well, because it is one. There was a vote. It was in the committee through regular order, and the vote failed. And that's something that they're not wanting to talk about. That's a fact. There was a vote and it failed. He said, if Democrats want to vote for a bill on the floor, there's a way to get one. It just takes 218 signatures on a petition and they can have a vote. It's that simple. But what they're doing, that's not it. And they're actually trying to get this done through a different order, staging protests, trying to get it on TV. And if it's not a political stunt, then why are they trying to raise money off of it? Because they had already prepared all of these mass emails to go out to all of their supporters to say, look at this, we've got to stop these Republicans. They're tweeting it out, blasting out these emails. So they were all prepared to pull this political stunt, which absolutely wasn't going to be effective at all. And he went on to say that our focus needs to be on confronting radical extremism. Terrorism is the issue. Let me say it again. Terrorism is the issue, and defeating terrorism is our focus here in the House. So this is the people's house. So Jakari Jackson took to the streets of Austin, Texas to find out what the people thought of this stunt.
As we speak, there's a sit-in on Capitol Hill where the participants hope that their actions will draw attention to the 4 gun bills that recently failed in the Senate. Now, what's interesting about these 4 is that they all contain language about background checks in some measure or another. And it's leading many people to question, well, even if these bills have been retroactive, would they have prevented San Bernardino or more recently Orlando? Also, people are pointing out that one of the participants in the sit-in is John Lewis, a representative who has found himself a victim of the no-fly list. So we're going to talk to the people here today and see if the sit-in is the right way to go. Do you think it's good for the civilian populace at large to have the right to bear arms?
Yes.
Okay. And with the Democratic sit-ins, one of the things they're trying to bring attention to is the bills that failed this week. They're basically all gun background check bills. Do you think that gun background check bills, had they been retroactive, would have prevented Orlando, San Bernardino, or any number of the other shootings that we've seen here recently?
I think they could. We could go farther into background checks before those type of guns are sold.
Say of any of the bills that were up for vote that failed, would any of those prevented San Bernardino or Orlando, even if they had been retroactively passed?
You know, if I was marketing it, I would be saying, like, it's not about prevention, but it's lives. Hey, you know what? Maybe the guy couldn't have gone in Arsenal. Maybe he still could have gone guns. Maybe instead of in Orlando, he would have killed 48 or 47 or 45. But at least there would have been that many more lives not killed. So if he couldn't do that gun, and if he could do another type of gun instead, is he going to feel that his Second Amendment rights are maybe they're infringed upon, but he still has Second Amendment rights?
Well, it shall not be infringed. It's right there in the Constitution. Shall not be infringed. He has a semi-automatic gun.
Restrictions on freedom of speech too. I mean, you know, we can only take it. It's not just carte blanche. Not just carte blanche. Same things with